So it came to our attention that last week TNA made some very strong changes to their pay-per-view schedule, and it has come to our attention also that this is a very prevalent topic of discussion amongst the YWC, which is why we here at the British Fist are going to be talking about it in this video. We're going to be looking at the new pay-per-view schedule that TNA are giving us, and we're going to be saying, is it a good or a bad idea? But I'm Mr. Parkin, people, and this guy standing next to me is none other than NJ.
I need a haircut. What's up?
And I've got a haircut, people, and I also have a beard. Subscribe down below, like this video, and we'd really like to get your thoughts on whether you think this new change going forward for TNA's pay-per-view schedule is a good or bad idea. I really do think it is a massive part of discussion that could be here in the YWC.
Because for TNA fans, this is something that TNA are trying on us and trying for their benefit, so please make sure you contact us in the links in the description box below.
Good save there, NJ. I forgot to mention that one, didn't I? So, I think the first thing we should do is we should talk quickly about what this pay-per-view schedule entails. Now, the main point of this is they're going to be going with 4 big pay-per-views. They're going to have Genesis, they're going to have Lockdown in March, Slammiversary, and Bound for Glory. So there's going to be 4 big pay-per-views there, but they're going to have 7 $15 theme pay-per-views. But what's interesting to me is not just the amount of pay-per-views they're going to have, it's the pricing schedule. You know, we've got $35 for Genesis, $35 for Lockdown, $40 for Slammiversary, and $45 for Bound for Glory. And next year, that increases to $40 for everything except for Bound for Glory. Now, there's only going to be 4 pay-per-views a year, so you can understand why TNA would still want to charge that amount for a pay-per-view, pretty much.
When it comes to 4 pay-per-views, obviously they still want to gain a good amount of money, so to increase their prices just so they're getting their set amount for each pay-per-view, it makes sense. And of course they've got their biggest one costing the most, even though it's only $5 more, but there we go.
And also, we go into the 7 $15 theme pay-per-views that are going to be taped. But before we quickly go into that, 4 pay-per-views a year, do you think that's too little? Because I kind of think that they originally got rid of 2 pay-per-views, which I thought was good. I thought that having maybe 6 or 7 a year may have been more beneficial personally. Talk more about that later for my own personal opinion, but I do think that was the kind of thing I was really furthering towards. I thought that going to 4 $15 theme pay-per-views was going a little bit of a step too far, but just give your thoughts on 7 pay-per-views a year with 4 pay-per-views with the 7 theme pay-per-views.
Well, straight away, when I heard that TNA were cancelling down their pay-per-views, I thought, okay, I personally think it was as needed as much as they've done now. Going down to 4 out of the amount they had, I think, to be honest, with TNA's booking as of recently, as you've heard us in our reviews, maybe going a bit too far. But obviously, as we go through this video, you'll hear why. But I say TNA are going to try what they can.
Yeah, and I really do think maybe 6 pay-per-views a year was going to be a good way of going down, but they decided to really just throw out the whole book, really, and just completely change what they've done. The theme pay-per-views, there's 7 theme pay-per-views to this schedule that are going to be taped on a Friday, and they're going to be $15, which is about the price of a ROH pay-per-view. We've got TNA Extravaganza featuring the stars of the X Division, so it's going to be an X Division style pay-per-view.
Straight away, reading that one, the first that comes to mind is Destination X. So to be honest, going to, let's say, a smaller pay-per-view like this, yes, you're still getting X Division involved, but Destination X is a pay-per-view that I personally would have got rid of just so this one could take over.
I do agree with you. I think Destination X should have stayed, even though they are trying to recreate Destination X. I do wonder what is going to happen to Option C now they don't have Destination X, but an all X Division pay-per-view, I think I'll enjoy it, but I did like Destination X.
That's the thing, the big point you made was Option C. The fact they just made that, and that was going to be an ongoing thing that Austin Aries made, and the next year it's gone. So to be honest, if they somehow bring it back, but move it to a different pay-per-view, like one of these other big 4s, then at least it will still be countable, but if not, then I think TNA have just blown something that we were given high hopes for.
To be honest, it looks to me, looking at these 7 theme pay-per-views, that they're just kind of like fun, like you can like maybe buy them for $15 and not really care too much about the build. You go into TNA Hardcore Justice 2, which is the ECW reunion style hardcore show featuring hardcore stipulation matches, bringing in ECW talents. Kind of reminds me of Hardcore Justice a little bit.
I do think with this one, again, with Hardcore Justice, that was a pay-per-view that you expected there to be somewhat biggish matches, big cage matches, hardcore matches, or so on. But going to a smaller pay-per-view just so it's not like, a big deal, like every match has to be this, every match has to be that. It's more lighter. This one I'm not too bothered about, so I look forward to seeing what they swerve with this one.
Indeed, and what we will talk about more later on in the video is how will TNA get us excited for these shows, which is a big thing. TNA 10 reunion starts from the early days of TNA battling inside a 6-sided ring. That could be pretty interesting, in my opinion.
I think the one point I was going to make earlier was the fact that TNA fans probably look at this and think, oh, I used to like that pay-per-view, this pay-per-view, that pay-per-view, but they've got rid of them now. So I think to give TNA fans something to replace those old favourite pay-per-views, which is these ex-wrestlers or the past wrestlers, I think that may give them back some enjoyment, especially for this pay-per-view.
And you could, a lot of these old fans, you could bring a lot of these old fans back with these 15, they'll probably think, oh, $15 to see this will be pretty interesting. TNA Knockouts Knockdown. It seems like a one-night knockout tournament with the first round being all stipulation matches and the final four in a test of their stamina to see who their final victor is. Seems like a sort of pay-per-view where they just highlight the knockouts division, see who's the best knockout on the roster.
Well, look at this and go look at the X Division one as well. As I personally feel, maybe Mr. Parkin as well, recently, or for the last probably almost a year, the Knockouts division and the X division hasn't really been as high where it should be. Like it goes somewhere, then they start contract the main event again, and they both slip back down. So for a pay-per-view to be about the Knockouts, I say good luck, because obviously your booking of them has just not been brilliant recently.
And we don't have that many knockouts either, so it'd be interesting how they do this. TNA International Incident, not one-night tournament featuring talent from the United States, India, Mexico, Ireland, Canada, Germany, Japan, and the UK, and the winner earning a TNA title shot. This, along with the next two pay-per-views, goes with like this whole worldwide theme, trying to like get all these different countries involved, represent them in some way, which goes towards TNA trying to make a more of a worldwide brand out of their business.
With this one, I look at this and I feel that with the whole get a title shot, it's almost like not their rumble, but you're winning a thing to move on to something bigger, a title shot. So for this, I think the fact you're doing worldwide wrestlers and maybe even the current roster, I'm not sure how they're actually going to do it, this pay-per-view could be good for the talent that goes on to the championship.
The TNA X Division World Cup Tournament. 4 teams of X Division wrestlers in one night tournament featuring singles, tag, 6-man and 8-man tag bouts. Anything involved in the X Division, to me, should be pretty interesting. A World Cup tournament, trying to like take the whole soccer, football sort of theme there, I guess.
This one I'm a bit about, because you've already got an X Division 1 that's going to be concentrated on the X Division, blah, blah, blah. You've got another X Division 1, and to be honest, until they've improved the X Division, I don't see having 2 pay-per-views involving the X Division the best idea just yet. But the fact that TNA have done this, booked it, got it, I feel that they may have future plans for the X Division.
And they're probably going to bring in talents from Japan, maybe Mexico, maybe Britain as well, the Europe, who really knows. It looks like to me that's what they're going to try and do. And maybe or not, you never know. These X Division wrestlers might impress and actually get contracts for the company. Who really knows? The TNA World Cup of Wrestling. 4 teams, each captained by a TNA wrestler, featuring a heavyweight wrestler, a tag team, and an X Division wrestler battling in singles, tag, and stipulation bouts. The final will be a 2-ring triple champs battle royal. This sounds like a bit of a clusterfuck, doesn't it?
I think with some of the headings of these pay-per-views, I think they're trying a bit too much with what's going on around the world and what's going on in their show. So maybe these are just a one-time ideas and they'll probably cancel them down or whatever they're going to do. With this one, at least they're trying to come creative and they probably planned what's going to happen in this first year collection of them. So I'll say again, good luck to this one.
Good luck to this one indeed. And we got all this information off tnasylum.com, guys, so make sure you go check that out, where this video will also be featured too. And now we've talked about the X Division theme pay-per-views and all the kind of things like that. Give us your opinion on the theme pay-per-views and how they're going to be going around their pay-per-view schedule.
And for TNA fans I also would like to know, are you happy with this new schedule or do you miss the old one?
Indeed, and what we're going to do now is we've now looked at the pay-per-view schedule, the new pay-per-view schedule TNA have instigated in 2013, and now we're going to give more of our opinions as to whether we think this is a good idea going forward or a bad idea going forward. So now it gets to the question as to whether or not this new pay-per-view schedule by TNA is a good or a bad idea. But one thing we cannot deny is with the decline of the wrestling business and the pay-per-view business in general as well, with having a pay-per-view every month, it's got to the point where something had to change. They had to change the schedule somewhat. We've been saying for a long time they had to get rid of some pay-per-views or something like that, just to help the storytelling aspect of wrestling a little bit more, and to help us financially as well, that can't really afford 24 pay-per-views a year if you watch WWE and TNA. So for the first thing off the bat for me is that this is a good idea in the sense that it is a change we did need. I guess my only issue is, have TNA taken this a little bit of a step too far?
Straight away, I personally, when they first started doing it, taking away the 1-2 pay-per-views, I thought, there we go, they're doing something creative. As soon as I read this, I just thought, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Because I personally, at this moment in time, I don't care if people don't like me for this or disagree, I don't think TNA may have the best benefit of doing this. I think they may struggle with keeping storylines active, keep wrestlers on the screen, especially when there's like a 3-month gap or whatever between pay-per-views.
Yeah, and also, they've put a lot of pressure on themselves as well, haven't they, to sort of say, these are our big 4 pay-per-views. They're going to have to really deliver now, aren't they? Because, let's face it, if it doesn't deliver, then we have to wait another 3 months for another pay-per-view. So
Genesis!
TNA, exactly like Genesis. TNA have put a lot of pressure on themselves. I'm not saying it has its benefits, don't get me wrong, but they put a lot of pressure on themselves to deliver with the 4 big pay-per-views, in my opinion.
I think with the big I think even before they got rid of the schedule, the other pay-per-views, they still had to make those pay-per-views seem big. And yes, we complained about some pay-per-views, complimented some. So now going down to 4 in these miniature ones, I think TNA have more work, as Parkin said, more work to do because they've got to try and make these feel big, they've got to make them work, and after the 3-month build, shall we say, they've got to make them pay off.
Indeed, but I think it also does allow for like big impact shows that could draw better ratings. One thing that TNA have really struggled on lately is the ratings, and they could put like a sort of Saturday night main event show on their Impact where they kind of build up a couple of impacts a year, maybe 4 or 5 impacts a year that are like sort of mini pay-per-view 2-hour impacts. So it allows them to get ratings in that way, and it will affect the way they tell the stories because feuds will have to go from one pay-per-view to another, and it'll be interesting to see how they keep people interested within like a 3 or 4 month gap of one feud going from one pay-per-view to another. It will be a real challenge for the writers, in my opinion, even though it could have its benefits for long-term storytelling.
I think in the moment, we're going to be getting like title matches on free TV. We're probably going to try and get filler matches, because I think for 3 months to try and keep a feud to try and keep Bobby Roode and James Storm going for 3 months without having, or who could put James Storm against this week, blah, blah, blah. I think they may struggle with that aspect. I'm not saying the pay-per-view will be bad, but I think the build, there's going to be aspects when they're going to have to give us filler matches, title matches, and that, yes, it makes sense because a 3-month gap, but it's still not really, it's going to probably take away some of the effect of the pay-per-view at the end.
Indeed, and this is what I mean about TNA maybe taking it a step too far. I'd say 6 or 7, maybe 8 pay-per-views a year. You could, it'd only be 1.5 months, and you could see TNA building, feuds between that time. But now you're going to have 4 big pay-per-views and 7 theme pay-per-views, and they're obviously not going to get. They're not going to be like there to advance storylines. They're just going to be there for more fun. Like, we may just pay $15 to get these shows. But at the end of the day, there are still 11 pay-per-views a year. And I thought the whole point of this was to decrease the pay-per-views to somewhat. And also the themed pay-per-views are going to be on a Friday, which is going to be a little bit off. Like, people will go out on a Friday. People will be doing stuff on a Friday. So, there's that to factor in as well. That will affect the buy rates a little bit.
Well, I'm not sure about the time worthy of when this is actually take place on a Friday night, but obviously it's going to clash with SmackDown at the same time. Yes. But to be honest, I think Friday, maybe in the US it'll be different, but in the UK it may clash with going out and other shows. So it may be a bit of a problem, but 11 pay-per-views, I expect these smaller pay-per-views, 7, to have some big moments in them, because obviously you've got to try and attract people to them so they get their $15. So I'll say it's still not going with what they originally planned, which was minus pay-per-views, but at the same time, I still think some of these pay-per-views that we list, the 7, sound pretty good.
It sounds to me that they've got 4 seriously big pay-per-views and 7 like sort of fun filler shows, which you could see, there's not really going to be any storyline advancement or anything like that. Some people may see them as pointless because they've got no build. Other people may see them as just fun, pure wrestling shows. A lot of indie fans kind of like it that way. I guess my one question is, How excited will people be for a taped theme show? Because we know they're going to be taped. They've already taped about 2 or 3 of the pay-per-views already. And they're probably not going to have that much build. And despite being $15, will it really be enough incentive just for the title itself to really bring people in? Especially seeing as people will probably know what the results are because there's going to be spoilers all over the internet and it's not going to be live or even out of the Impact Zone.
That's the other point I want to bring up. The live thing. The live is not going to be an ongoing thing. It's going to come to an end. So there's going to be the taped 7 pay-per-views and the taped shows. I'm just hoping they don't take too far ahead and then an injury happens and stuff gets mixed up. But right now, I think the whole it not being live anymore is going to be a downfall. But so that's why these pay-per-views are going to be more important because if people are not liking that it's finished live, the shows will you need to count more.
Indeed, and it seems to me that this has been put here because they want to focus a lot more on their TV shows and a lot more on their ratings, as TNA is effectively a very ratings-orientated company, and I can't blame them for actually trying to put more focus on their TV shows. But at the same time, having, let's say you have 6, 7, 8 pay-per-views a year. I mean, to be honest with you, to me, that just seems like a much better, just a much more well-rounded schedule in terms of not just fully focusing on TV ratings, also trying to focus on pay-per-view buy rates, even though for TNA, the pay-per-view buy rate business isn't that great because they only get like 10,000 buys per pay-per-view. But what does that say for a pay-per-view that's $15 now as opposed to what it was before at $35? It's not really going to do that great for revenue at the all costs.
Maybe more people are going to be acceptable to paying $15 because obviously the price is a lot cheaper.
The price alone may sell it. That's the thing.
That might be the case, but I personally would have stuck, without these 7 gimmicky ones, I would have probably stuck to the real big ones that TNA fans are used to that are $40 or how much you're going to spend on them. Because I personally feel that it's those pay-per-views that people are used to like and they have more of a story behind them than these miniature ones.
So I guess the ultimate question at the end of the day is, we watched all 12 TNA pay-per-views in 2012. Will you be watching or will you want to watch or want to review all the pay-per-views this year? Or are you particularly critical of the theme pay-per-views? Do you really, really want to go out of your way to watch those, or are you kind of on the fence? Or
at the moment,
some
of these I just don't really think they sound spectacularly great. So I personally feel more reading the 4, but I'm not going to not watch these smaller ones. But it's just at the moment I'm more drawn towards the 4 that the TNA should be concentrating on.
So overall, we asked the question. Sorry.
Same as you.
Yeah.
So what is your thoughts?
My thoughts on it. Well, I just particularly want to go on to the fact that, do you think it's a good or a bad idea? This whole thing.
I'm gonna say right at this point, before they actually gone ahead with this, bad.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, I did originally think it was a good idea. I think the idea of getting rid of some pay-per-views is a good idea. The theme pay-per-views, it seems to me like they took it a little bit of a step too far, but at least in my opinion, it's a step in the right direction. At least TNA are trying to do something. They're trying to change something. They're trying to adapt to the pay-per-view business, which, let's face it, wasn't once as good as it was in, say, the Attitude Era when interest in the product was at its peak. So I'd say a good concept, which is really going to depend on the execution. But overall, it's a step in the right direction. But I feel TNA may have gone a little bit too far in how they've done it. But I tell you what, it'll be interesting to see how they actually go around doing this schedule right now. It's big change.
I just hope the TV shows don't feel like bigger than the pay-per-views. Obviously, the TV shows need to have interest. They need to do this. They need to do that before the pay-per-view. So when that starts to kick in place, and I can see that they know what they're doing, then my opinion may change. But right now, I just think TNA, what have you done?
It'll be interesting to see where TNA take this. And as for your question before about whether or not I would watch the theme pay-per-views, I must admit, I am interested. I am intrigued. I mean, they may not have that much meaning. They may not have any storyline or build to them. But sometimes I think what we lack in the wrestling business is just fun. Like, we just so much concentrate on storylines and stuff like that. That these pay-per-views to me sound like shows that may not have that much meaning, that will just be fun wrestling shows that will cost $15. That's what it sounds like to me. I'll judge more of it when I've actually watched a couple, but right now I am slightly intrigued to watch these pay-per-views and see how they factor and see how they hype it on the TV shows and stuff. I'm genuinely intrigued, if not a little bit critical.
I am looking forward to some of them, but the others I'm like, TNA, you don't really need this. But I am going to go into this with open eyes and open arms and just see what they give us, and hopefully they know what they're booking themselves into.
And I believe that is exactly the stance we should take. Go with an open mind, see what they do with it, and then be critical of it after we've seen it. So basically, what we're asking you guys is, what do you think of this new pay-per-view schedule that TNA come out with? Because it's big news, and it will change the way TNA do their pay-per-view business essentially. And do you think it's a good or bad idea? Please, whether you're on YouTube or whether you're on tnasylum.com, please give us your thoughts on this topic down in the comment section below. And NJ?
And please also, I would like to know, do you prefer this new schedule or the old? Because that's my point, because at the minute I'm leaning more towards the old, but I'm going to give this one a chance. And for Mr. Parkin, I'm the NJ. Enjoy our TNA Impact video that comes on Thursday.
Wedding bells are ringing!
Oh dear.